Hello chess friends and welcome to your out of chess channel and welcome back to our Queen's Gambit Declined studies. So in these studies we have seen some great defenses like the Qc2 defense, Tarrasch defense, semi-Tarrasch defense and many more. And today we're continuing with our Queen's Gambit Declined studies and its so-called exchange variation. So the exchange variation we have started recently. First we have seen this intro video in which I've introduced to you the most important strategic concepts and strategic ideas about the Queen's Gambit Declined exchange variation. Today we're starting to analyze a very important attacking concept of whites. I think this is must-know theory. This is a must-know idea in the Queen's Gambit Declined exchange variation. So we'll stuck to this idea a little bit more. I'll explain this idea in a couple of examples. We'll see also some cool Stockfish games, how Stockfish is playing the same position with the white pieces, but then also with the black pieces, how Stockfish is defending actually against this idea. So it will be, I think, sort of a mini series about this approach. And the approach is this f3-e4 setup. So you see many times the pawn is here or in the beginning on e3 and this pawn is on f2. So white is trying to build sort of a slow build up here with the move f3 e4, then maybe even push the pawn here in e5, f4, f5 and similar stuff. Many times white is trying to do here sort of a pawn majority attack here on the king side. So this is quite risky because usually you should not push this pawn on e3 on the e file to e4, because sometimes you can be also left with an isolated pawn if you of course don't push the pawn on f3. But many times you can get this kind of a hanging pawn structure after a couple of more moves. So maybe you get this structure in the center of the board. Okay, when it comes to maybe some restrictions ideas, this is perfectly fine. Then you have of course here these two pawns that are controlling 4 squares on the other side of the board. So of course black cannot use now these squares for the minor pieces. The minor pieces would love maybe to jump on these 4 squares, but these two pawns are restricting them. But when it comes to also a little bit more about the black's ideas, I think black has also good chances maybe with queen to b6 to attack the d4 pawn. Then of course the king is a little bit hanging. Many times you can use the d file and the e file to attack this pawns maybe with some rook activity. So sometimes this hanging pawn structure can be also a structural weakness. So it's quite risky to play this idea, but it's a double-edged idea. I think we have many great games that are also won by black, but we have to say it also, there are so many great games that are won by black. So as I said, this will be a mini series about this particular attack. So let's see now one game as a warm-up. I think I found a game that explains this f3-e4 concept in a beautiful way. It's a beautiful gameplay by Garry Kasparov against Andersson back from 1998, in which Garry Kasparov really played, I think, a beautiful f3-e4 setup. And I think if you are starting maybe to play this setup, or maybe if you play this setup from black's perspective, I think this could be really your beautiful cornerstone game, because from this point on I think you can then really understand the concept of the f3-e4 attack, and then of course we'll build it up with some different ideas for white and for black. So let's see now this beautiful gameplay by Garry Kasparov and Andersson, and how to reach actually this f3-e4 attack in the center of the board. So here d4 is our first move. Knight to f6 was played by Andersson. c4, e6, knight to c3, and after move d5 we have now so far the Queen's Gambit Declined, pardon me. So here after move c takes d5 we have now the exchange variation. We have e takes d5, and now after bishop to g5, notice that there is this threat, bishop to f6, queen to f6, and then of course the queen is disconnected from the defense of the pawn here on d5. So that's why you have to be careful now from black's perspective. Also bishop to d6 leads into the same idea, bishop to f6, queen to f6, and then we'll pick up simply the pawn on d5. The problem is now if for instance you play, if you allow of course bishop to f6 and you want to stay connected to your pawn on the d file, then you have to take out with the pawn. And when g takes f6 happens, then you have so many weaknesses. The f5 is weak, h5, the f6 pawn is weak. So that's why you have to play now a solid move first, c6, in order to protect the pawn on d5. So now queen to c2. This is now our slow build up. We are delaying the knight's move. That's now very important here to say. We don't want to play with our knight to f3, because you saw in the beginning, our main goal of this build-up is to play f3-e4. So that's why we don't want to take the square here with the knight here on f3. We're delaying the knight move. So we're playing every other move. We just don't want to play with our knight on g1. So in the continuation, bishop to e7 was played by Andersson, e3, knight to d7, bishop to d3, kingside castling, and now knight to e2. This is now the build-up that we'll learn a little bit more. This is a very, very important position that you face many times from white's or from black's perspective. So in my opinion, this is really must-know theory, and there are many, many games, millions of games, as I said, also great games by black. So this will be, I think, really, really a fun series. So now Ulf Andersson played rook to e8, and we're playing now kingside castling. Here knight to f8 was played, and again we should play this idea f3 with the preparation to play the move e4. But notice e4 is sort of a threat. It doesn't have to play, doesn't have to be played necessarily immediately. You can delay this move a little bit. You have to first improve your pieces. You have to first regroup. You have to first secure also the king, because as I said in the beginning, many times with the move queen to b6, the queen could maybe indirectly attacking the king. So if you push the pawn on e4 and then try to advance maybe to d5, this diagonal can be used by the queen's activity in order to attack the king. So after bishop to e6, rook to e1, notice how Garry Kasparov is moving all of these pieces towards the king side. He's still preparing e4. e4 will come, and basically black cannot prevent e4, because even if you play some ideas of, let's see, rook to c8, we play king to h1, even if you play something like c5, if you're trying to break the center, if you're trying not white to allow here maybe to push the pawn on e4, still it's not so good position for black, because we'll simply pick up the pawn, d takes c5, rook to c5 or bishop to c5. But now we play this blockade idea against the isolated pawn. Look at this now. Black is simply left with an isolated pawn, which is again a structural weakness. So it's not so easy here for black to break the position with the move c5. That's now, I think, now the most important thing to say about this pawn structure in the center of the board. You would love, of course, to play that. A better idea, a better concept after move, for instance, king to h1. Here in the game, Ulf Andersson tried to play knight to d7. But in my opinion, a better concept, and if you're playing the game from black's perspective, there is a weird move that actually black should play here. Here, a brilliant idea is to play b5. And many of us would say, no, dude, what you're talking about, this is really bad what you're doing. You're leaving a structural weakness here on c6. You have this backward pawn on c6. But when we think about it harder, and I'll explain in the continuation of our mini series about this particular position, that actually this is the way they go. I'll explain you what's all about. We'll see a beautiful Stockfish game in which Stockfish will use also this kind of a motif. Maybe it will not be the same position, but here with the move b5, notice our main goal is maybe to get this kind of a position. Knight to d7, knight to b6, knight to c4. Maybe use this other knight, knight to d7, knight to b6, knight to c4. That's now motif to fix everything around the square c4. If maybe white prevents this idea with the move b3, then white could be a little bit vulnerable on dark squares. The other important thing here to say after potential b5 move is that we are trying to attack the knight on c3 with the move b4. Even if a3 happens, then still we can launch this queenside attack with the move a5, and then we're trying to play the move b4, kicking with the knight will be misplaced, and maybe then afterwards we can break with the move c5. So this is now a sort of pawn majority attack. It's a little bit weird to see the pawn majority attack against white on the queen side, because many times we have seen the strategic idea of white can be a pawn minority attack of whites on the queen side using this 2 versus 3 pawn minority. I've explained it also in our previous video about the minority attack. If you have seen maybe the video, so you should really check it out, because many strategic ideas we have talked about in the minority attack, also in the Queen's Gambit Declined exchange variation. So you see, I think in this particular position, black is already doing something with the move b4, and now we're trying, as I said, maybe to reroute the knight here on c4 or something, and then I think black could have a solid game. But this move that maybe Ulf Andersson played, knight to d7 instead of b5, we have seen c5 immediately. It's also not a good move, I think. Knight to d7 is, in my opinion, a little bit risky, because black is giving up a very powerful bishop here. When we talk about bishop's activities, the bishop on e6 is of course not a good piece, because it's just used as sort of a part of the pawn chain. It's just a big pawn sort of here in the center of the board. On the other hand, the dark square bishop is a much better bishop, and you notice now, okay, maybe Ulf Andersson wanted to undermine a little bit the protection of the e3 pawn, but still I kind of feel this is risky, because the dark square bishop should be left in the game. Maybe we can reroute and here the bishop to d6. Maybe we can use then maybe the queen on c7, attack the pawn on h2, because when white is building this f3-e4 preparation, of course there are also some weak squares left behind in the position. So as I said, we can maybe use the queen on b6 move in order to attack the position further. So in my opinion, you should keep your pieces from black's perspective that are attacking the dark squares. That's, I think, the point about this idea. But okay, let's see now the continuation of the game. Here Garry Kasparov accepted the challenge. He says, okay, I will trade it off. Now you basically lost your best minor piece on the board. So we have rook to e7, knight to f4. So you see, still Garry is not pushing in the center. e4 will come. Black cannot prevent e4. Maybe you can play f5, but f5 would be risky. Then of course you leave the e5 unprotected. Then we could maybe play an outpost on e5, and there's not a good way anymore to prevent it. So of course immediately f5 is not so good, because you can take it out, because okay, white has a bishop and queen better. But even if you prepare it maybe with g6 f5, okay, you have maybe protected the potential e4 breakthrough. But look at this, if you manage even to push the pawn on f5, then your light square bishop is really paralyzed by both of these pawns, by the pawn on f5, by the pawn on d5. Then it's simply such a bad bishop that you can say it's just a pawn in the continuation of the game. So really it's hard now for black to defend the position. So here in the continuation, Ulf Andersson tried rook to c7. Again, I'm pointing out here, still he had the opportunity maybe to play this move b5, because this c5 move, maybe in the beginning it's not so good, but it could come maybe in the later state of the game. Now again we're threatening, let's see, a3, a5. Maybe if you try here to move b4 to protect b4 by black, then we'll play this maneuver, knight to b6, knight to c4. And I think here, as I said, black could have really good games. So first we take, of course, a takes b4, and now with knight to b6, knight to c4, this is a perfect position for black. So in my opinion, you see, this is a double-edged position. Black has also some chances in the game. I've talked about this knight to c4 idea in our minority attack video, so please check out really this minority attack video, because we have talked about this defensive strategy of blacks, where we can maybe occupy this c4 square. In the continuation, let's go back after move knight to f4 and rook to c7 that unfortunately here Ulf Andersson played. Garry Kasparov continues still with his plan. He's trying still to move e4, but first, this is really beautiful what Garry is doing. He's first regrouping. He's building really a slow attack. He's not rushing with the move e4. He first improves. Look at this. The queen on f2 is now also protecting the d4 pawn, because if you push, of course, the e4 pawn, then the d4 could be a vulnerable square in the position. So in my opinion, here really good move here by Garry. So now after move knight to f6, now the fun starts with the move e4, d takes e4, f takes e4, and notice now we have now reached this position, this sort of hanging pawn structure in the center of the board, which is quite risky now. But I think this is a good hanging pawn structure, because what should you do here now from black's perspective? d5 is coming, and there's not a good way to protect it. d5 will be launched for sure. This is now the beautiful breakthrough motif. When d5 happens, I think the position in the center explodes. Maybe you could try here knight to g4, attacking the queen, but actually the queen can stay on this diagonal. This is still a good square for the queen, although it's a little bit weird to see the queen on g1, but so far the queen can stay there a little bit, but still we have opportunities, of course, with move h3 to kick away the knight from this active square on g4. So now you could maybe try to play rook to d7, maybe trying to continue the pressure around the square d4, but now d5 should be the main motif. Look at this, actually in this particular position even the bishop is trapped. So really wild stuff. So after move f takes e4 that Garry Kasparov played, Ulf Andersson tried a rook to d7, but again d5, we have to use now our pawn mobility in the center of the board. We have to use now our pawn hanging pawn structure. Now this is the way to go. The position explodes now. C takes d5, we have bishop to b5 by Garry Kasparov, intermediate attack against the rook. Rook to c7, e takes d5. The problem is you cannot actually take with bishop to d5 or knight to d5. You get simply pinned. by the rook activity on the d file, so you will lose then of course the minor piece, or you simply lose too much material. So it's not the way to go. The bishop has to retreat. Bishop to d7, bishop to e2 here by Garry Kasparov. We have rook to c8, and now here the queen simply took the pawn, because also the threat was this beautiful fork with the move d6. So really beautiful ideas here by Garry Kasparov. So rook to c8. Now Garry picks up simply one pawn and has now a completely better endgame here against black. So b6, so queen to a6, knight to e4, we have d6, knight to d6, but now this other knight is coming into the game, so Garry sacrifices now one pawn just in order to connect both of these knights in the center, creates one tempo, and has now also a good attack here against the weak pawn on b6. Rook to e5, queen to b6, knight to f5. Here Garry Kasparov simply took. After rook to d8, we have now a new position. Okay, it's a position where white is only one pawn up, but it's a different story now because we have two connected pass pawns, and this is completely winning game here for white. So bishop to d3, rook to e1, rook to e1, knight to g6. Here Garry Kasparov simply pushed the pawn further. a5, we have bishop to g6, h takes g6, rook to d1, attacking the knight, knight to e6, and now knight to b6, creating this beautiful pin on the d file. You have to now react. We have rook to d8, knight to d8, but now after b4, knight to e6, and b5, in this position, Wolf Andersson resigns. So as I said, this will be now our position. In my opinion, this is a beautiful cornerstone game. This game we'll use now in continuation of our series about this particular position. We'll see also good chances for black, but notice this will be a very important pawn structure that we'll study now. Please check out also our minority attack video. Here's the link of that video. Because I think many ideas are explained already. There are also some good defensive strategies for black, so please check it out. And if you want to maybe see more games about the Queen's Gambit Declined and with some other defenses, some other opportunities, please check out our Queen's Gambit Declined series. Here's the link also of our beautiful Queen's Gambit Declined series with some other ideas. And if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and what to say, chess is the best, of course.